Hey everybody. So last Friday, I was in the middle of playing some games in the 1-bit jam that was going on during the week, and I wanted to rate some of the games I played. And when I went to go do that, it turned out that you can't rate games in the competition unless you actually submit something. Not only do you have to join, but you also have to submit an entry. So I got the silly idea of making a game with a little bit of time that I had left. Now, at the time, it said submissions weren't due for another 15 hours, as you can see there. But I was nearing the end of the day on Friday and had plans on the weekend, so I didn't have a lot of time to make anything. And I thought it'd be an interesting challenge to try to come up with something in just a few hours, or in the few hours that I had left in my workday. So yeah, so I went ahead and joined the jam and tried to get something done really quick. And so I'm just going to go over the recorded footage here, scrub through it, and kind of just talk about my ideation process and, well, the whole process involved in what I ended up making. Now, in the end, I didn't fully complete it, but I was able to get pretty far in what I wanted to do. And I thought it was a fun little test of skills, so to speak, just to kind of gauge where I'm at right now. I'm glad I was able to get something up and running so fast that was semi-playable. It was so the design I ended up going with was a 1v1 game in the style of Smash Brothers or something similar. And so, yeah, this is the video going over all that. So I hope you enjoy this. It was a fun learning experience for me and a fun test of skill as well. So I'm just going to let the video run and talk over it. So right here, I'm in Photoshop. I was debating there for a minute while I was looking at the Game Jam page on whether I should do this or not, and if I had enough time. And here I am, just kind of drawing some sketches for the first idea. I was leaning into the light theme and dark theme, and I was thinking maybe you had two characters that you can swap between, and you have a black character and a white character. The black character can interact with the black switches, the white one with the white switches, and here I am sketching out what that could look like gameplay wise, some kind of game level here. But I was trying to think how could it be a little more interesting than just getting to the door before well, there wasn't even much of an objective here. I'm really just talking ideas out right here. Here I was thinking maybe if the switch is flipped right there, that the platform will switch, and then you would get the other color on the bottom of the platform, and then the other character can actually jump across the platforms and make it to their switch. So that's one of the features I was thinking. And then I started coming up or thinking about a second idea here. What else could I do? I was thinking maybe some kind of brick breaker game where it's horizontal, kind of in the style of Bit Trip Beat. But then I was thinking maybe down along the bottom, so it's a little more old school, like Super Breakout, one of my favorite games of all time. And so I was trying to think how could I make this interesting and make it fun. But I thought the brick breaker was maybe a little, I don't know, it didn't really spark a lot of confidence in the idea. So I decided to go with something similar to the first one. And here I am opening up a sprite. And this is a technique I did for Lord Darkfrog, one of my last projects, which is where I use a tile map and try to draw all the sprites for the game in just a single tile map. And so here I am designing the two characters that you'll be able to run around with. I've already chosen a couple of colors here, It's not pure black and it's not pure white. Try to avoid those colors just to make the contrast not as harsh and not as blinding when you're playing hopefully full screen. So so I created the two characters. Try to make them not just have the opposite colors, but also play with the shapes a little bit. So one has the horns going up on their helmet, the other one has the horns kind of curved downwards, and the proportions are just a little bit different just to make them stand out from each other. And then here I am kind of exploring what a platform can look like, or maybe a small tile set. I was thinking I could maybe lean into the tile map feature, or more specifically, the terrain sets that you can do in Godot. And here I am scrubbing through the documentation because I was looking for a reference image for the tile map. And then it was taking a bit long and I couldn't find the image I was looking for. And I ended up going with something else. I was looking to see exactly what the feature was called here. That's why I opened up Godot in another project trying to find it, but I just kept going in a loop. It just kept spinning me around into the same documents, or the same section of the documents over and over. So at some point, I'm like, you know what, this is taking a bit long. Maybe I need to think about it a different way, and also maybe at the same time, maybe tile sets could be overkill here. So in the effort of speed, I decided to go with just a couple platforms that I just hand draw real quick, and then I'll just grab them and copy and paste them. The point is to try to get a game done quick, right? I have less than 3 hours. Really, and I thought I went over this in the video, and you could watch the see. Look, here we go. I finally found the image I wanted. So here's the reference image. And so in order for tile sets to work, you need to set all that up. And I was like, okay, well, that's a bit much. Let's just make a single platform, and I was right there looking at the sketches I made earlier in Photoshop. Now I can make this a cool design. How could it affect the gameplay a little bit? But I decided to maybe make some kind of pillar. So these are like standing on a pillar. Or these could be like decorations, or some banners hanging off of it. Yeah, so I'm here just playing with some shapes, seeing what's interesting, what could work. How could this be fun in the level? So it's not just a plain square or rectangle. I did want to have some kind of special art for this thing, just so that it stands out and has a little bit more character. I didn't want to just draw stick figures or just plain rectangles. So here I'm just kind of carving out the other platform. I'm thinking, how can I make it stand out against the gray background? Because if we are only going with two colors, then that kind of plays with that influences what you can build, right? So I'm here thinking maybe a light outline. And at some point here, I'm going to take it into the game and see what that looks like in the engine. I'm just adding little details and whatnot to try to make it look different from the other platform. And real quick, while I'm going over this part, how I want to go over how I came up with how much time I needed to get the game done. It was about 2:30 when I started this. You see the time up at the top right. It's getting near 3 o'clock. I usually stop around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. So I really had about between 2 to 3 hours to get this thing done and submitted. It also needs a Twitch page. And so I thought, okay, well, if I have 3 hours, I can't try to think of a game that I can build in 3 hours. I actually decided to divide that time in half and round down. And so realistically, I had about a half hour or an hour to build something because, to get an idea out was going to take me a little bit. And so I figured, okay, I have about 30 minutes really, because after that, it's just tweaking what's in there in those first 30 minutes and making sure it works. So here I am. I finally made it into Godot, and I'm just setting up the project with some basic nodes. I have my main scene. I've got a tile map where I'm going to start building a basic level out of. I have my first character. I'm using the character body 2D node in order to represent the character. And here I'm making some adjustments. Once I got into the game, I was like, oh, I can play with these shapes a little bit and the proportions. The character was off center a little bit, so I had to rethink the body to make sure that it's centered. And so now I'm just copying the other character over, nudging them based, and then kind of doing some tweaks here as well to make sure that the character stays centered on the sprite. Doing this all in A sprite, which is really great for this kind of work. It's a lightweight application. You know, it runs good on almost any computer. If you have a potato with a Raspberry Pi and a monitor hooked up, this will probably run just fine on there. So I was playing with the lighting. I was thinking maybe I can lean into some edge lighting there, but in the end I ended up getting rid of it. And so what I'm doing here is just setting up the tile map, giving it a tile set with a couple layers to play with, background and the environment layers. Then I've gone into the tile set here, and I'm starting to build the platforms. And I ran into a little bit of an issue here. Ideally, you want the collision shapes to kind of line up, and I was having issues here. And you'll see once I get this going, if I remember correctly, the character gets stuck on the platform because when I was manually lining up those shapes for the physics bodies, they weren't pixel perfect, and so they were creating a little bit of gap, and the player was getting stuck on them. And then what I'm doing here is kind of tweaking the character placement a little bit. This is where I want them to start. And then I go ahead and start to build out that player class, adding a basic move speed and jump velocity. And I messed up here. I actually wanted to use the template character controller that this thing comes with, that you can use in Godot, but I ended up just making one from scratch and actually pasting in some code from a different project and whatnot. And so here, this is when I start getting a different idea for the game. And you can see I'm using one of these, this new export range feature. I'm not sure how new the range one is, but essentially it lets you set a range between, you give it two numbers, the first number and the last number in the range, and then the amount you want per step. So I want whole integers here, so that's what the 1 is for. And then the last argument right there is a hint that I was trying to get to show up, but it wouldn't show up. So I ended up just putting the double hashtags there, so that when you mouse over the node in the inspector, it'll tell you this reflects the player number for this character. I was thinking this could be a 4-player game, and I'm thinking, man, at this point, I can't even test this. I don't even have 4 controllers. So like, well, what do I need to do? Maybe I just put both players' controls on a single keyboard. And right here, you see, I'm like bringing in a state machine that I was using in a previous project, and this was overkill, folks. This is I was making things too complicated here, because first I brought in the state machine code, and then it's not really working, and so I'm having to kind of update it and mess with it a little bit. And now I'm like, I thought it'd come in handy, but honestly, I should have just left everything in the base player sprite, because this was a bit much. I'm still learning, right? I'm not a professional programmer or a highly skilled engineer, so this was a bit too much. and I should have just skipped it and gone straight into making the character go how I usually do it. So here I am kind of reviewing the this video, which is a great video, by the way. There's a video series on creating a platform in Godot. You can see the name of their state machine setup for 2D platformer character, Godot 4 game dev tutorial. I highly recommend you look that up. Hopefully the channel's name comes up and I can give you a reference to that. But let me see if I can find. If I find that, I'll drop that in the description. But yeah, so here I am modifying the code, and right here I'm really burning time. Just scrubbing through the video, seeing where they're putting their character controls, etc. And you see he's actually modifying the base character setup that he had and introducing a state machine. So even he's chopping up his code and moving code around from script to script. And I mean, I killed a good probably 20 minutes here, which could have been spent working on the game. So, this was a little bit too advanced for me. And so there you go. I think this led to having less game dev time and hurt the project in the end. So here I am taking my first break, and then I come back and continue work on this thing. So here I'm going, just chugging along. Let's see, where are we? I'm kind of looking at the level here. I'm probably saying something out loud which would be worth reviewing, but I just kind of start going at it. See, so now I've kind of let the controller alone, the character controller or the state machine, and I start tweaking the sprites a little bit more to try to have them stand out from the background, and I start focusing on that for this little bit. And so instead of the super thick outline, I kind of came up with a mix of both. And so now you can see the gray character. I guess it's no longer white now; it's a light gray. So here I'm just playing with the game canvas and kind of tweaking it so that it looks just right. And now here I come back to the state machine, and let's see how much time I spend trying to get this thing figured out. For a game jam, and I think this is good practice and it's a good learning experience, because I'll tell you the biggest thing I learned really was, if you overcomplicate things in the name of having, in an effort to have clean code, then that's less features in your game, right? You got to think of this as more of a prototype. This thing has to get done quick and just convey the idea that you want, right? And if you spend too much time worrying about the architecture and all this, then that's going to hurt the time that you have for this prototype. So yeah, there's the biggest lesson I learned. And so here now I'm thinking, okay, these two characters need some kind of weapon to swing at each other with, and so here I am defining what their weapons are going to look like for each one. And then the reason why I use this single tile map here is, you'll see here when I bring in the bitmap, I have this shared bitmap that I save as its own scene with this tile map, and I bring it in here, and all I have to do now, everything's been adjusted. I just need to change the frame, and here I am rotating it. So I was originally thinking that the character swings the sword when you hit the attack button, but I ended up going with something a bit more basic. I do like the swing. Thought it could be fun. But I think what turned me off from using the swing was the collision, because then I started thinking about the weapons for the fantasy survivor game that I put together using a tutorial, and I was thinking about the weapons, and I remember the issue that the weapons had with their collision was that it was really small, and then the weapons moving, and it's hard to judge where is a good hitting point, like where you want that action to happen in the timeline for that weapon. And so here I'm just kind of setting up the action button, and while I have the input map open, I go ahead and define the attack action there, and I start playing with the animation here to try to get that little animation to play. And for some reason, it wasn't playing, so kind of keep tweaking it here. There it goes, and it's hard to see here, but there we go. I went ahead and finally zoomed in. So of course, both characters share the same script at the moment and setup, so they're both attacking at the same time. And this is what I'm kind of testing the timing and getting a feel for how that attack works. And then let's see. So I'm putting the art in its own 2D node, and then that way I'll just rotate the well, that lets me flip the character art and whatnot. So here I start to add the movement, and so I start adding or I start defining actions for the input map for this, and so this is where I kind of build out the controls. And this is mainly for the character movement. And I think right here is I was looking at could have been referencing another script. Here you go. So I just made a I use the built-in character body template that gives you real basic quick controls for the character, and then I just swapped out some of the commands with my new actions, and you see here now both characters are moving with this controller, and I'm just adjusting the numbers here so that it fits for this game because it's a really tiny space, and so having values for move speed and jump velocity that are 3 or 4 or 500 is just too much. They just move a little too fast on the screen. So and then here I am going into the project settings and setting up the layer names for the render and the physics layers, as I'll be using those pretty soon. And then I go ahead and start kind of playing with the layout of the game here and trying to nail down, the final full screen dimension so that it fills up most of your monitor if you go full screen. And here I'm just looking through the documentation here to see how exactly that is on floor check works. And just turning off the playing with the collision layers there and the collision mask. The player is looking for the terrain essentially, and the terrain doesn't need to know where the player is, and so that's why I turn the layer off and just leave the mask on for the terrain. Here we go, and so here I'm referencing the state machine from the previous project and start to fiddle with that a little bit. And again, here I am just kind of tweaking the numbers a little bit, see what feels good. Just jumping around and swinging your sword. One of the things I didn't like about the swing attack, because it's a low detailed game with a very low pixel resolution, what ends up happening is that the pixels get distorted when they rotate. And I didn't end up liking the way that looked because the outlines kind of disappear. And then the weapon disappears into the background and you get really weird jaggies. So I start playing with setting up some kind of hitbox component here to get the weapon to work. And I end up having a bit of hitting a bit of a wall here. I kind of get it working at first, and then I don't. Again, this goes with making things a little too complicated. Number one, and number two, it's my skill set, right? I'm still learning what to do and what not to do. And I'm glad I did this jam because that kind of made that problem surface, and then now I can adjust for the next one, right? I'm on another project right now as well for the Metroidvania month that I'm partnering up with someone with, and with that one, I got to keep these things in mind. I got to try to, I want to get as many features as we can in versus having clean architecture. You know, where I can make it clean, that's great. But I don't want to overcomplicate things. I just want to get something to work. It's good enough for a game jam. The game's not going to go into production and doesn't need a scale. So there's no reason to, I mean, it's good practice to learn, right? But I don't want to spend too much time trying to do that. And also too, being, number 3 on that list is, you know, my lack of experience contributes to not knowing exactly how I should set this up correctly, right? To scale up. So maybe I'm trying a little too much here, to take on a little too much there, this early in the project. So a lot to learn. Um, but yeah, I mean, this, going into the second break pretty soon, and I've got the character moving around. I've got the sword swinging action. I've got character art in there. At this point, I start making sounds for the project. Um, and I like to use SFXR. This one's known as JSFXR. I'm assuming that's for the Java, since this runs in the browser. Because there's also an exe that you can use on Windows, but you see here I'm on a Mac. So I have a premium account with this thing. I really like this software, the service, because I can make these fun, old school sounding chiptune sound effects very easily. I can save them into separate projects. As you see there, I went ahead and set up a 1-Bit Jam 2023 folder, and then I can do save as I make these sounds and save them in that folder, and then just download them all afterwards. So here I am just kind of creating all the different sounds. So I have an attack sound, I have a jump sound, I have a hit sound. I think I make 1 or 2 other ones, just to have them in my back pocket, because I'm trying to think ahead to what else I can get in. So there I go. I got my 4 sounds. Go ahead and bring those over. See, so there's the other sound. It was the death sound, which never ended up making it in. So, and I went the easy route here. I just went ahead and just made 4 audio stream players, and then just dropped the corresponding audio into each one, as opposed to writing code to swap out the stream file, like the actual sound, depending on what you're doing. Because it's like, oh, now I can just say, oh, just play this one, just play that one. It's a little quicker. And there's a fun little game jam tip. It's not the prettiest player scene, but it works. And here I am just kind of testing the sound, playing with if I want to put the attack sound in the function that calls the attack, or if I want to put the sound in the animation player. Look, I came back for the final push here from that last break, and there you go. Turned the camera on, said, let's do this. Let's get this done. So if you're wondering why I have the camera there, this is from my Twitch stream. So you can catch me on Twitch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, sometimes Fridays, depending on what's going on, where I'm just building games in Godot and learning the engine and learning how to program. So stop by sometime. I usually just kind of talk out loud as I'm working on stuff to try to figure things out, and you can see my thought process behind things and how I figure things out when I get stuck and work through problems and whatnot. And so right here, I'm thinking about the presentation. I want it to look nice, so it's got a nice dark frame around it. You've got your play field here. Both characters are moving around. And so the next thing I need to do here is have two separate controls for the characters so they don't both move at the same time. There you go. Something happened there where I had to reset the image, but now we have two different characters with two different weapons. You see, I'm having a little fun there with the jumping. The jumping feels really fun. Also swinging it, and so now I start playing with dealing damage, and this is where I got really stuck. I had it kind of working, and in the end, it doesn't work 100%. Um, so I'm a little sad that it didn't go in the way I wanted because I didn't even get to add a game over screen or a restart. You just kind of whack on each other until you get bored, essentially, because there's no death. You'll see here. I start building the UI, and I'm like, well, the players need to see each other's health, and so I just start building what that could look like. And it's essentially two labels per character. Um, and here I am. I'm bringing in a font for that I picked up on itch.io. It's a little bundle that comes with about 10 fonts, and there's a few good ones in there for low res pixel based games. So I kind of bring that in here and start playing with those settings. At some point, I realized that that's a third color, and I need to get rid of the blue. But yeah. Then I start thinking, oh, I could drop an icon in here for the health. So I start kind of playing with that a little bit. With these 16 by 16 sprites, you got to take advantage of every pixel you have. Each pixel counts. So I'm sitting there just kind of tweaking what that could look like. And then this is when I realized that the outline doesn't really work because it starts introducing anti-aliasing and fuzzy outlines. And so instead, I opt to just keep that dark bar along the bottom and then bring the UI down and go with that route. And this way the UI reads against the background. And so I start building a UI class here to kind of handle the two characters' health. Go ahead and connect some references to the two players. And so now the label kind of keep up with what the health is. And, now that I'm watching this, so I ended up making this game events file that was going to handle shooting signals whenever the player takes damage. But essentially, I mean, I could have just gotten around that by just making the UI node just constantly update and look at the player's health. All in the name of brevity, right? Just to get it to work, because I could have probably gotten it to work by now, but instead here I am going, oh, I need a singleton, and I'm going to bring in these signals and have separate functions and just pass this information around, which is fine for a bigger game where you can plan this stuff out. But again, this is eating up a bit of time setting this up. I could have been done already if I just had the labels update every frame. It's a very low cost to do that. This isn't a game that's taxing on a system, right? So yeah, that's another lesson I learned there. Make things small, make things fast, and just get them to work. Afterwards, if I had time, sure, go in there and be like, this could use a refactor. I can use the signal system in Godot. And then here I start having issues here. Like, well, that's not working. What if I try this? What if I add a Boolean value that says this is player one and it says true or false, and then but it just starts getting too complicated too fast for my very, very junior engineer brain. So again, kind of overcomplicating things. And it's one of the lessons that people try to teach you when you're learning. Keep it simple. You want things to be easy to read for your future self and to understand if you or somebody else is looking at the code later. But also, you're building a really quick game jam game. There's no need to take, you know, 20, 30 minutes to build something out, especially when I said originally I really only had 30 minutes to build something out, right? So now I'm eating into that time. Uh, who knows what I could have been adding a game over state, right? I could have been, and then that's going to make the game feel more polished. And then I could have added some particles for when the characters get hit, some cool little noises, and maybe some screen shake. So yeah, lesson learned. You know, I think for the next one, when I want to get an idea out, I have to keep this stuff in mind. But if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't be picking up on these mistakes, right? So I would say if you're like me and you're on your path to learning right now with coding and you want to make games, I'd say you do this. Record yourself or stream yourself, kind of learning as you go, and rewatch the video here. I'm learning a lot just by rewatching this. I was planning to just kind of talk about what I was doing, but now I'm kind of picking up um, on some things I could have done better. And then the next time I have a little bit of time to get something working, um, I'll focus on just getting that thing working, and then I'll think about refactoring it if it makes the cut and gets into the game. And then this is where I'm struggling here. I'm not having success getting the. Oh, actually, no. I'm working on flipping the sprites based on the direction the player's going. And then I also update the weapon striking. So instead of using the animation player, I end up just using the sprite sticking straight out from the character, and then it's a little easier to set up the attack that way with the timing and whatnot. And then the sprites don't look as janky because they're not rotating anymore. So here I still have the swing animation, but at some point I go in there and change it. And so yeah, I'm just kind of double checking here because I was hoping I can use that flip H setting in the sprite, but I need to do it to the 2D node that contains it. And so here I'm trying to figure out how I can do that. So I just put this art node, this 2D node has the weapon and the weapon sprite and the character sprite. And then I opt to just flip the art node when the character's facing the opposite direction. And then now when the weapon comes out, it's going to swing in the direction you're facing or you were last facing as opposed to always going to the right. And that's what I'm adding here. See, like this stuff should have taken, I think, precedence over that state machine because, this is me refining the gameplay here, and I feel that's a lot more important. So here I'm separating out the left and right movement based on what action is being pressed. See, and here's another issue with bringing in code from a different project. I'm like, oh, now I don't have this direction variable that I had before. So what's going on here? And then I start spending some time here trying to figure out what's happening. So I take a look at another project. I'm like, what was going on in there? Which comes to another important lesson learned in this. It's like, well, you get these projects done, and each one you'll learn something, right? And then you have something to fall back on when you run into an issue with the current project. So the more small projects you get done, the more of a library that you've got growing, not only on your hard drive but in your head too. So all good stuff to fall back on. Of course, the issue that I'm having here, it's like, oh well, I'm bringing in this code, but this game acts a little different, so I have to adapt this to this game, right? and here I'm having issues with this still. So seems I've sorted it out there. I think there was a bug there where when I stopped moving, or when I let go of the button, the character kept moving. So I was just setting the character's velocity to 0 as soon as they let go of the button. But every time I play test it, I get a smile on my face there because it's pretty fun having these characters kind of bounce around and whatnot. And then this is where I start having issues with the with dealing damage and whatnot. And I'm like going over the code. I'm like, this should work. Blah blah blah. I'm not sure what's going on here. Um, and looking back at this, I'm like, I shouldn't have even bothered with a hurt box or a hit box, or I'm sorry, the hurt box, because I could have just checked. I could have interacted with the character body instead of trying to make a special component that handles that, right? So again, trying to make it fast. Don't make it complicated. Get the idea out first, and then you can refactor. I don't know how many more times I'm going to say that, but it's a big lesson to learn. So here I just think at this point I'm calling it done. It's the end of the 3 hours. I said, you know what? Well, game kind of works, and I ended up expanding on it a bit. After this, I found about a half hour to sneak in the controls for a different character, and I got the UI to kind of work. But as someone noted in the comments in the game, that one player can't take damage until the other one takes damage, and so that's a bug fix I want to go back and fix. But I mean, I'm pretty happy with the result. It wasn't the full game I wanted, but there we are. It was a fun experience. It was a good learning experience, and then now I was able to rate the games on Saturday morning. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Go check out the game. It's I'll drop a link in the description. I don't even think I gave it a name. So yeah, go check it out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop a like if you do. Drop a subscribe, and let me know if you like this kind of stuff. And I can do some more. I've got a bunch of streaming footage from projects I've either completed or I'm working on. So stay tuned for those, and I will catch you on the next one.